So let's take a look at the percent equation. Up here in the purple box, you will see that it says find the percent, find the part, find the whole. And we have some statements here. Where next to where it says find the percent, it says 3 is what percent of 6? Next to where it says find the part, it says what number is 50% of 6? For finding the whole, it says 3 is 50% of what number? You will see some common words that are in all of those statements. And those words are is, of, and percent, or the percent sign. When you have statements like these up in the box, those words are going to represent different things. I think percent sign and percent is obvious. That's going to represent the percent. And you will see up here that where there's the percent sign, the number that is before it is the percent. So in these two statements, I have 50 and the percent sign, and so I know that that's the percent. But in this first statement where it says 3 is what percent of 6, there isn't a number before the word percent. Instead, we have the word what. That is because, as it says over here on the left, we are finding the percent in that problem. Take a look at the word of. If you notice, it says of 6 in the first statement, it says of 6 in the second statement, and it says of what number in the third statement. The number that comes after the word of is the whole. It's the whole amount. It's that number when we were finding percent of a number that we were multiplying our percent by. It is the starting amount. So you can see in the first two statements where it says of 6, that 6 is our starting amount. It is our whole amount. But in the third statement, after the word of, you have the word what, or what number. When you have no number after the word of, that is what we're going to be looking for with that statement. And you can see over here on the left that it says find the whole. And then that brings us to the word is. Before the word is, up here it says 3 is. Before the word is in the last statement, it says 3 is. And then in the first statement, it says what number is. In first and the third statement, 3 comes before the word is. Well, 3 is our part. It's the answer we would get when we take the whole and multiply it by the percent. But you will notice in the center statement where it says we are finding the part, we have what number before the word is. That's because we don't know what the part is. And we're going to find it when we take 50% and multiply it times our whole, which is 6. So what we've learned from this is that the whole comes after the word of, the percent comes before the percent sign or the word percent, and the part seems to come before the word is. However, that is not entirely true. Is the one word where the part can come before it or it can come after it. So we actually need to find the percent or the whole first, and our remaining number will be the part. And so what does our percent equation look like? It looks like this. Part, or is equal to the percent times the whole. Or the word of. So part equals percent times whole, or is equals percent times of. And there you can see it there. There's something you need to notice about the percent. When using the equation, we want to write our percent as a decimal. So we are going to have to move our decimal point each time we put our percent into the equation, And how many times do we move that decimal point? We move it 2 times. Never once, never 3 times, always twice. So let's take a look at example 1. It says, what number is 12% of 150? So remember, we're doing part, or is equal to percent times the whole, or of. So we need to find which numbers are which. And my recommendation for you is to go ahead and write this statement down so that you can box things in until you get used to finding them. So my suggestion is always to find the percent first, because it's the easiest to find, because oftentimes it has a percent sign. So if you see the percent sign, then the percent's going to be right in front of it. The second easy to find is the of, or the whole, because the number will come after the word of. So we see of 150, so my whole is going to be 150. So my percent's 12, my whole is 150, which means we are looking for the is, or the part. So we do not have that. So in writing my equation, since I don't have the part, I'm going to use the variable p for my part. Remember, I have to take my percent and turn it into a decimal. So 12% as a decimal would mean I have to move my decimal point 2 places to the left, and I would get 0.12. And then my whole is 150. So these problems are just like what we were doing the other day when we were finding percent of a number. We're just simply taking the decimal and multiplying it times the whole. So I will put 0.12 times 150 into my calculator, hit equals, and I find that P equals 18. Notice this is the part, so I will not include a percent sign for my answer. We only include the percent sign when we are finding the percent. Take a look at these letter problems. You will see that statements A and C are just like what we saw up above, where we have a percent, we have an of, and we have the question, what is, in front of it. But take a look at B and C. We have the percent, we have the of, but we don't have the words what is. Well, if we have a percent and we have an of, then we can assume that the thing that we are missing is the part. So if you have the percent and you have the whole, assume that the part is what you are finding. Take a look at example number 2. It says 21 is what percent of 40? So again, part, or is equal to percent times the whole, where whole can be found by the word of. So again, I would write out this short statement so that I can go and I can box things. I don't see a percent sign. When there is no percent sign present, then I would go ahead and move on to the whole, because again, the whole can be found after the word of. So I see of 40 here. So I know that my whole number is going to be 40. Over here before the word is the number 21. So since 21 appears before the word is, we can now know that this is my part. Then I can see that it says what percent. I don't know my percent. Since there's nothing before the word percent other than the word what, that is the thing that is missing here. So keep that in mind, since the answer we're going to get has to be a percent. We will need to label our answer with a percent sign. So using this equation, I'm going to replace part with the number 21. I don't know what the percent is. We're going to use the letter N to represent percent. I know you're thinking it should be a P, but because we use P for part, we need to use a different letter for percent. So the common letter to use is N. And the number 40 will be our whole. Well, instead of writing it to the right where it belongs, since multiplication is commutative and algebraically we don't put a multiplication sign when we have a number and a variable, we're going to put our whole number, 40, in front of our variable 4% n, so that it says 40n. How do I solve that equation? Well, I know that I have to isolate the variable n, meaning getting it by itself, and the way to do that is I do the opposite of what I see. Since 40 and n are being multiplied together, I'm going to divide by 40, and I have to do that on both sides to keep my equation balanced. So 40 divided by 40 equals 1, so I'm left with my variable n, and 21 divided by 40. That's not going to come out to be a whole number. I have to divide that in my calculator, 21 divided by 40, and I get a decimal, 0.525. Gee, I probably should check that because I thought I was getting a percent. 21 divided by 40, no, I get a decimal. I wonder why. Well, think back. When we just did problems back here and we were given a percent, what was it the first thing we did with that percent? Oh, that's right. We moved the decimal point 2 places to the left, turning it into a decimal, so that when we used it in our equation right here, our percent was actually in the form of a decimal. Well, guess what? When you do these problems and you're finding a percent, the answer you get is not going to immediately be a percent. Instead, it's going to be the decimal form of the percent. If we move that decimal point 2 places to the left to turn it from a percent into a decimal, how would I turn this decimal into a percent? That's right. I would have to move the decimal point 2 places to the right. It's like multiplying it by 100. So what I actually am going to end up with is 52.5 or 52.5%. Remember, because this is the percent that we were finding, I must include the percent sign. So that makes this a little bit more challenging when we find the percent, because the answer we get is not going to be a percent until I move that decimal 2 places to the right. So make sure when you find the percent, that's what you do. So that takes you to these letter problems. In these letter problems, you will find that it is the percent that is missing. So remember, when you get that answer, you're going to have to move the decimal point 2 places to the right and include the percent sign.